Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. It's great to be back with you today on another wonderful Sunday. Here we are once again fighting for our liberty, fighting for our rights, on the mic, talking all things liberty, guns, and government. By the way, for those of you who are new to the program, my name is Mac Worley III. I'm your host, and this is On the Move. This is the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. So first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to get involved. So with that being said, today, I'm actually very, very excited about the show. I'm really looking forward to today. We have a special guest coming on the show. He's a fellow activist in open carry. His name is Jeffrey Smith. I have a couple of articles of things that he was involved in, and I want to talk to him and basically get his perspective on what it's like being an open carry activist, and why he does it, some of his thoughts, some of his positions on open carry and gun rights in general. So we're going to talk shop. I think it's going to be a fun conversation. You guys are welcome to join this conversation, by the way, and you can do so in a variety of different ways. First and foremost, you can give us a call. Our MacPack phone lines are open, so feel free to light them up. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that is 360-450-5625. In addition to that, you can give us an email at talk@onthemoveshow.com. You can also message us on facebook.com/onthemoveshow or on Twitter @onthemoveshow. With that said, today's episode is titled Open Carry, a Fight Worth Having. In addition to that, it's also labeled government transparency, because we're going to be talking about some issues regarding government transparency that we're seeing right now. I want to talk about that. In addition, this is episode 74 of the program of our broadcast, the On the Move Show. So anyway, first things first, if you guys would do so, if you haven't done so already, please do me a personal favor, support our program by doing this one step, this one simple thing that you can do to support our message of liberty, to help us get more listeners. And you can do that by simply just going to Spreaker. That's Spreaker. Again, that's Spreaker with an R in there. It sounds like speaker, but it's the word Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Go there, follow us. I know it takes a little bit of time to sign up and everything if you're not on there already, but we really, really do appreciate it, and it does help. As far as the way that the shows show up on Spreaker and in other platforms like it is based on how many people listen to the program and how many people follow the show. So the more followers we get, the higher we show up in the search results, which means more people will hear the message of liberty. And you'll be really doing us a big favor here. You'll be doing us a service here, trying to help us, get this program out to as many different people as possible. Maybe we'll help change some minds and bring people into the fold of liberty, essentially. So anyway, and also for those of you who don't know, we also broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We discuss, like I said, all things liberty, guns, government, things along those lines. So, basically that covers every topic almost. So today's topics are featured topics, and by no means are we limited to these topics. So if you guys have something that you want to bring to the conversation, do so. And all the ways I mentioned before, you can call us 360-450-5625. But today's features topics are the sound and reasonable argument for open carry, the systemic fear-mongering coming from anti-gunners, essentially, their rebuttals against open carry and just gun rights in general, for example. And then I also want to talk about this practice of dehumanizing opposition, not just political opposition, but also, just people that we disagree with, people that we're in geopolitical wars with. This happens all the time, where we give names to our enemies that basically dehumanize them, make it easier for us to make them the enemy. And some of those names that I'm going to be talking about, for example, are what anti-gunners are calling open carriers nowadays. It's a common slang or derogatory term that they're using. It's called ammosexual. And in addition to that, I want to even point out some of the things that I personally have done, and I know some people in our community have done. We refer to Second Amendment supporters who do not support the uninfringed carrying of firearms as sunshine patriots. And I want to discuss this kind of dynamic and situation, and how I think we can use supporters of the Second Amendment, who we would classify basically as, sunshine patriots. We may think that these people are sunshine patriots because they don't support open carry, they don't support uninfringed gun rights, things along those lines, but they do support, for example, many of these people support concealed carry, or they just don't get what the purpose of open carry is. So that is a conversation that I think that we should dive into, because I think there is a lot of common ground there that we need to discuss, and I think that we may be handling things wrong. Not that people aren't sunshine patriots. I'm just saying that I think there may be ways to go about this that can be more beneficial than name calling. And I'm guilty of this myself. I've done it before. But for me, I look at it more of as a labelization. We're going to get to all this here in a minute. But anyway, before I do anything else, I have to discuss D-Day. I don't know if any of you are aware of this. I'm sure many of you are. We just hit the 71st anniversary of D-Day on the shores of France. So this was June 6th. This was yesterday. 71 years ago yesterday, we sent our men and women to the shores of France, on this crazy, this was a crazy plan. We were just going to storm the beaches, and they were prepared. And this was the battle of World War II, in my personal opinion. This was the battle. This is the one that turned the tide in the war, and it was a big deal. And I think it's really interesting that so many people don't have a desire to understand or learn history, and they don't think about it in their day-to-day lives. Granted, I understand, you got a lot of stuff going on in your life, so do I. I think that, it's easy to get caught up in keeping up with the Kardashians or Monday Night Football. I get that kind of stuff. Those are entertainment value purposes, but there's a lot of lessons to be learned throughout history. And one of those, for me, I think it's just respect for those who serve the country, and those who put their lives on the line, literally, to stop fascist regimes from essentially taking over the world. That is what the ultimate goal. If we would not have stopped Nazi Germany in their tracks, if we would not have started the war, joined the war, we'd all be speaking German right now. There's no doubt. I've seen maps where it was laid out, and these are planned maps from the Nazi regime, where they were planning on invading South America and going up to North America and taking it over, and basically carving out between the axis of evil who gets what out of these areas. So I have no doubt in my mind that if we would not have entered the war when we did, and if we were not successful in the D-Day invasion, I have no doubt that I would be, speaking German right now, if I'd even be alive. Honestly, you really have to think about how many of us would not have been here if it wasn't for the heroicism shown on those beaches that day. It is really something that we cannot forget. It's something that we have to remember. There were a lot of lives that were lost on that shore that day. A lot of people died. And I want to just give you guys a sound clip here, just to give you, an idea of the historical impact here. I have a speech given by Dwight D. Eisenhower. At the time, he was a general of the armed forces. And here's the speech that he gave prior to the invasion.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940-41. the United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in an open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
You know, you can say whatever you want about the character and content of the American people, and you know, a lot of people tend to demonize us, including ourselves. You know, even within our own communities, we have people that say that, you know, we are a corrupt nation, our politicians are corrupt, and rightly so. I mean, many of them are, but you know, this time period to me, I think, is one of the most interesting to study. You know, I think this involved, you know, so much patriotism, and indeed it could be considered nationalism in a lot of ways. But you know, people in this generation, they knew that they had to stand against this. They understood what was at play. They understood that there were major risks to their way of life. I mean, extremely different than the kind of point of view that people have nowadays. You know, most people are so apathetic, so outside of what's going on in the world. You know, people in this generation, we call it the greatest generation, the World War II generation. People knew what was at stake. People went to bed every night wondering if their country would be there when they woke up. Every single night they were terrified. And if you lived in Europe, oh my, yeah, you were terrified. You know, you had bombs going off in your neighborhoods. You know, the kind of warfare that was conducted in this war was a totally different kind of war than what we would even see today, unless things actually, this whole thin veil of civility that we have protecting us right now was to fall by the wayside. People wouldn't even understand what was happening if this kind of warfare was conducted today. They have been so brainwashed to think that wars can't happen. You know, governments won't just straight up carpet bomb cities. They certainly wouldn't think that anybody would be nuked. People, when you think about nuclear weapon technology now, it's almost like a myth that is out there in the ether that people don't even consider as a real thing that could happen. However, you know, honestly, I believe that a new axis of evil is forming. You know, I'm not trying to demonize more than it should be, but I think that the Russian government right now is building and building and building, and it's pushing and testing what it can get away with. It's going to continue to do this. It's basically proven that NATO is a joke, that it's not going to do anything. It's toothless. So they're going to continue to do stuff, and as they do things, it also emboldens other countries like China, for example. By the way, I don't know if you all are aware of this, but China is in the process right now of building islands 600 miles off their coast in waters that is not considered theirs, and they are now making military installations out of that. But I digress. Anyway, at this point, we're going to go ahead and cut to a quick commercial break. When we get back, we're going to be on the line with activist Jeffrey Smith. He's going to be joining us for the next hour here, and we're going to talk all things open carry. So you guys aren't going to want to miss this. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us. So, by the way, if you're new to the program here, I just want to let you guys know we broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at OnTheMoveShow.com. In addition to that, we simulcast at HaywireGulch.com. Anyway, at this point, we're going to be joined here by our caller, our special guest. His name is Jeffrey Smith, and he is a fellow open carry activist. He's on the line here. Hey, Jeff, are you there?
Yes, sir.
All righty, good. So first and foremost, I just want to say thanks so much for joining us. And second, I just want to talk about, first of all, what got you into the open carry gun rights movement in the first place?
Oh, boy. Way back in, I guess 2004 in Ohio, and I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. Mm-hmm. The Ohio Supreme Court ruled that concealed carry could be banned or regulated by the government, but essentially that open carry was the right. And through a series of open carry walks organized by individuals, Ohio got concealed carry. And I took part in a personal open carry walk shortly after the Ohio Supreme Court ruled on it, and continued to do it after then, and to ever greater degrees, to the point where I have organized various walks, events, and events of different kinds over the years.
Yes, sir. So let's talk about some of these events that you've organized and what effect that they may or may not have had. What was the first one that you did?
First one I did was at the University of Cincinnati. It was a walk. It was the spring of, it's hard to remember, a couple of years ago, I suppose, that I organized. And it was a walk that was supposed to be around the perimeter of the University of Cincinnati. And I was urged by some people to, after I posted about the walk, they said, how about doing it on the campus? Well, using the resources of my legal counsel and the legal minds of some of the forums that I was on, I approached the university using what's called notice, putting them on notice that under the law there was nothing illegal about open carrying on a public college campus, although it was then and remains illegal to carry concealed on a college campus. Mm-hmm. So the walk then, after going through that with the police and the administration and the legal counsel of the University of Cincinnati, they not only had no objections to the walk, but also said that students who participated in the walk while legally and openly carrying firearms would not be disciplined under the student code of conduct as they otherwise would be. And there were 13 UC students that took part. Oh, wow. So there were quite a few people that showed up. So it was a fantastic event, and we interacted with all sorts of people. They were just great. And the walks that I put on generally have been open carry education events, not necessarily an open carry protest event. This event that I'm working on right now at the St. Louis Zoo is a challenge event. It's a wouldn't call it a protest, but I'll call it a challenge. Essentially, it's put up or shut up. So, but anyway, UC was my first walk.
So, in regards to this this new event that you're working on, can you explain a little bit what you mean about the challenge event? What's going on with that?
Sure. This is the second. This will be the second event that I put on in St. Louis. The first one with the considerable help of a man by the name of Richard Loftus, who has worked with the Missouri worked with a fellow by the name of Mark Perez, who worked with the Missouri legislature for years. Richard was an integral part of it, so I want to put his name out there. An integral part of the open carry walk last October in downtown St. Louis. But to answer your question about the challenge event of this, let me give you a little history of how this came to be, this particular event. A man by the name of Sam Payton, who was scheduled to come to the St. Louis walk, and who was unable to come because one of his children needed some outpatient surgery. He and I talked prior to the St. Louis walk, after the St. Louis walk, and we've talked a number of times since then. He is I'm a bit older than him, I think. He is, I guess, what you'd call middle-aged. He is a black man from St. Louis who now lives in Springfield, Missouri. And he really stood out as far as, among the people that I talked to as wanting to exercise rights under Missouri's Amendment 5, or more properly, it's called Article 1, Section 23 of the Missouri Constitution. So anyway, we had talked quite a bit. Well, Sam contacted me after he had been at the zoo on Memorial Day, where he had seen the sign, said, I call them no guns. I think what they actually say is no weapons or something like this, no weapons on these premises. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I call them no guns for short. He contacted me when on Memorial Day he saw the sign, put his gun back in his car, which, as you know, is a very bad place to have to leave one's gun.
Yes, sir.
In St. Louis or just about anywhere. Mm-hmm. But being a law-abiding citizen, he is. He put his gun back in his car, figuring, of course, that the signs were legal and that the zoo had the authority to post them. So anyway, he went in, enjoyed the zoo, and he had been wearing an outer shirt and an undershirt, and he was quite hot. So at some point, he took his shirt off, and was leaving the zoo, and saw some security guys and asked what the story was with the no gun sign. And I don't know exactly whether he pointed to his holster or whether they saw it, but he was asked if he had a gun, I think rather forcefully, and he said no, he didn't. And they said, well, you're not allowed to have that here. And he questioned them about Senate Bill 656 and Amendment 5, and they said those were wrong. I mean, it was just amazing, the ignorance of these security people. And I don't know whether they carry guns or not, but anyway, the lack of knowledge was stunning. Mm-hmm. And they essentially told him that if he wouldn't leave right then because of his empty holster, that they were going to call the police. And by the way, if you want to talk to Sam at some point, I can hook you up with him after
excellent.
This interview.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from him. That'd be a great story to hear.
Okay. So anyway, I guess he sat there and stewed a bit and decided to leave, and then he contacted me afterwards, and we talked about it and decided that we were going to take a two-prong approach on this. He was going to write to the zoo and ask them about these people that he had interacted with and what their training was on the subject matter I mentioned, which is Senate Bill 656, which was a bill that allowed those who had concealed carry permits to open carry in any city in Missouri despite a local ordinance against it. Mm-hmm. It did a few other things too, but that's the big thing, is it applies to open carry. and then Amendment 5 was a constitutional amendment that the voters voted on, passed by a margin of 61% to 39%, and that it created in Missouri the strongest right to keep and bear arms statement of any of the 50 states. It's powerful stuff. Wow. And if you are not familiar with it, or if your listeners are not familiar with it, they should look it up. Amendment 5, or it's also the location in the Constitution is Article 1, Section 23. So anyway, he did that. He reached out and asked questions about that. So, and I reached out based on my research of what other people, contacts other people had with the zoo. I reached out to a man by the name of Wendell Hill. It's Wyndel Hill, and he is the Vice President of Internal Relations for the zoo. So I reached out to him by phone. I believe it was, let's see, today's Thursday. Today's Sunday. Mm-hmm. This was Thursday a week ago that I reached out to him by phone, left a message. And on Sunday, which impressed me, on this a week ago Sunday, he called me back. And he asked me, what my question was about, et cetera, et cetera. And he gave me a few hints that he was dead set against having firearms at the zoo. It was for the children kind of thing. He was the guy who recommended the policy to the zoo board, and I asked whether that had gone through their legal counsel, and he indicated that it had. And he also indicated that any attempt to get guns, any attempt to allow people to lawfully carry at the zoo would be turned down by the board. So I figured at that time that they couldn't legally do what they had done, but I figured, well, I'll just leave it. So later that Sunday, I emailed him with 4 questions about the zoo's postings of guns, no gun signs, and so I emailed that to him. So he would have had it first thing Monday morning. We went through, I guess, about Thursday at 9 a.m. St. Louis time. I called him, figuring that, look, if he had checked with his legal counsel prior to having these signs posted, that it wouldn't have taken any more than a law clerk to pull the file on that subject matter and get the answers to my 4 questions, which were pretty straightforward. I can read them to you if you want me to go to my computer. But anyway, they were very straightforward. Under what authority did they have to do this? Were they a public or private entity? And I can't remember what the other 2 questions were. But anyway, it wouldn't have taken anything on the part of someone at the law firm that serves the zoo to pull that information out, if indeed they had been checked with, and if indeed the law firm had made sure they complied with Missouri law. And by the way, that was another thing. He said that, yes, we want to comply with Missouri law. But so anyway, I called him on Thursday, and I said, Thursday morning, I said, do you have any idea when you'll have an answer to my questions? And he said, no, that my questions probably didn't get to the law firm until Tuesday, which kind of made me sigh. Mm-hmm. And the other was that he had put no priority on the requests with the law firm. Well, I gave it a few hours, thought about it, typed up something, and thought, you know what, I can see how this movie's going to end. And I sent off an email to him saying basically that my belief about the law, my research, belief about the law, and essentially saying to him, look, here's what this is. The zoo isn't an amusement park. You want to claim it's an amusement park because in Missouri law, the gated area of an amusement park is one of 17 places where concealed carry is, where the permit to carry concealed does not authorize a holder of a permit to carry concealed. So anyway, the zoo had been claiming to various people, and I found this on the internet in a number of places. They had claimed that they were an amusement park, and of course, exactly, they're an amusement park, and and Six Flags Over Texas is a zoo. So anyway, I sent off that email to him about it was about 2 o'clock my time or so, Thursday, when Cincinnati and St. Louis are an hour different. So sent that off to him and it said the things I just said, plus it said, look, either you agree to pull your signs by Friday at noon, or I will put you and various other parties on notice of and I don't know if I mentioned my intention to carry concealed and/or open there or not, but I said, look, by noon Friday. Well, noon Friday came and went, and so then I put my notice out as I had prior to the St. Louis walk, the walk in downtown St. Louis. I put my notice out, my legal notice out to the authorities and to the zoo, and copied in various members of the media who had been notified of or who had contacted or interviewed me during the St. Louis downtown walk. Put that out, and then things went from there. I got a call from Alexis Zotos of, I believe it's KMOV, Channel 4 in St. Louis, and I've had at least one print reporter call me and another reporter from a television station call me, and so then I created a Facebook event, and I've posted this to various forums that I'm on, one of which is opencarry.org, which is, as far as I'm concerned, although they don't deal with long gun open carry, they are, as far as I'm concerned, the best, sharpest group of open carry people and people who are knowledgeable about rights and not so much privileges. I mean, they're knowledgeable about both, but you want to talk about rights, that's a good group to interact with.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and you and I, off air, we had a conversation briefly about opencarry.org. I've actually, I'm a member on there. I have a profile and stuff, and I've had some conversations, very few with people on there. Mostly, I like to read what people say, but my lack of getting involved on that has typically been because of what you had just said, as far as them not openly supporting long gun open carry. I don't seem to see anybody who's like anti it, but I'm just trying to find somebody who supports it all, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. But I get what you're saying, and they probably are the premier group out there that's that's doing it. All roads lead to opencarry.org. It seems like I just keep coming back to it. So
it is stunning, and it's, as a matter of fact, and how I got acquainted with it is. I don't know how I got acquainted with it itself, but there was a Second Amendment Foundation meeting here in Cincinnati, where they do the annual, I don't know what in the world they call it, the annual get-together where they have various speakers and they talk about gun rights stuff. And they had a convention here in northern Kentucky, which is right across the river from Cincinnati, Ohio. And I attended that. And I knew ahead of time somehow, and I don't remember how I knew, nor do I remember what year it was, although I have a picture of myself with the two founders of opencarry.org. I knew they were going to be there, and I sought them out and introduced myself to them, talked with them about opencarry.org, about, I was excited about it because at that time it was fairly new, very new. And I also talked with Philip Van Cleve, who is the president of the Virginia Citizens Defense League, with whom I admire a great deal. But yeah, on the subject of long gun carry, I don't know, my perception is, and I thought it had to do with this fellow by the name of Leonard Embody down in Tennessee and the stuff he's done, but I've been told that it didn't. My perception is that the John Stollenwerk or Mike Stollenwerk and John Pierce are their names, the founders of opencarry.org, or as I refer to it, OCDO, opencarry.org. And as many people refer to as OCDO also, but I think and this is just me and my opinion, that they feel that the incremental approach is the way to draw people in, make get conversations with people, have a conversation that you wouldn't otherwise have with someone, because a long gun can be, not to say that a sidearm is not off-putting to some people, because it certainly is, but I think their notion is that the long arm open carry is more off-putting and to people than sidearm carry, and that you're more likely to have conversation and converts carrying sidearms. And again, that's just my opinion. I have no idea if that's I've not talked with John or Mike about whether that's what it is, whether that is what it is.
And
so anyway.
When you say that's your opinion, that's what you think that their opinion is, right? That's not.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. That's my opinion of what I think their opinion is. That's right.
Yes,
that's
sir.
right.
Okay,
absolutely.
So regarding this, this is actually an interesting conversation. I actually, I don't believe in compromising. Especially when we talk about rights, and I think that the conversation, and I would definitely like to hear your opinion on this regarding long guns, because I think it's something that needs to be discussed within this community. I look at this as like a flag. All right, when I'm out open carrying, especially if I'm out there to talk to people about gun rights, the entire reason is so that you see me out there, you can identify, hey, this guy's got a gun, and maybe somebody, as long as I'm smiling and I'm waving at people and talking to people and being friendly and things like that, people will be inclined to approach me. I've had people approach me when I had a long gun on me and ask me questions. So. And I've walked right by people with pistols on my hip, and they haven't even seen it. So
Me too.
the entire purpose, I think, of these kind of walks for me, for an educational firearm walk, is to let people know, hey, I'm here. Come talk to me. I want to have conversations with you. I want to tell you about gun rights. And I look at it as like holding up a flag or a sign. If I'm trying to get your attention, I'm not going to hold up like a little 5x5 flashcard, like saying, "Hey, talk to me about gun rights." I'm going to get the biggest sign I can hold and say, "Come talk to me about gun rights." This is. That's why I get the biggest one I can carry, because it serves the same function, and more importantly, when you're talking about individuals who have issues with it being oh, that's a scary weapon, that is this irrational fear that an AR-15 can kill better than a pistol can, and they both kill. If you get shot with a bullet, you die. Or you could potentially die. So
right.
The argument isn't really that strong when you're talking about what kind of weapon is dangerous. I think the entire purpose is to desensitize them to weapons, period, in that regard. What do you think?
It is, in my view, has changed, has evolved over the years. I'll say changed, maybe not changed, but evolved over the years into, and this is what I tell people who take parts in the walks that I organize. For instance, my most recent walk was at the University of Akron, and on that walk there were a number of former military guys, and one I think was an ex-Marine. And he said, and he was asking me about why do I do these things the way I do? And I said, this is about hearts and minds, and immediately that clicked with him. I said, the way we were talking specifically about dress, because one of the things I say to people is, and of course I can't control it, you want to show up looking like you just came off Skid Row, and there's nothing I can do to stop you. Mm-hmm. But I encourage people, I ask people to dress nicely for these walks. You don't want to look like you're there in military garb, you're there in paramilitary garb. You don't want to look like you're wearing a wife beater shirt and some cut-off shorts. You want to look nice. You want to look presentable. And okay, the gun may be off-putting, but I don't want the people to look off-putting. And so anyway, he and I were talking about, what people jokingly call my dress code. And I said to him that, not only how the clothing that people wear, but how they conduct themselves. It's about reaching out to people, educating people, talking to people, kind of like you said. I said it's about hearts and minds. And if you can't get to first base, if you can't utter a word, you don't have the opportunity to utter a word between you and that other person, then there's not going to be any hearts and mind opportunity there. So anyway, did that answer your question? I'm kind of rambling on here. No. I get on my soapbox and I keep rolling. So.
That's how I get. Don't worry about it. I completely understand. But no, you made plenty of sense, and I get it. I mean, in terms of what you're saying, I think that people have a right to dress however they want when they're carrying. I don't think that should be a requirement, and I respect what you're
Certainly.
saying. It's a suggestion, and it's more about appearance. I get it. For me, I kind of relate it back to when I was in the military. I was Air Force. I was security forces in the military, and one of the operations that security forces does is they do gate guarding. So, you come through, you get the ID and stuff like that. You are the first person that people see when they're coming onto this base. So you have a huge impact on the visual that people get from the base. So you want your uniform to be looking, real nice. You got your creases all good. You got to look hot. Your uniform has to be good. So, we call ourselves ambassadors for the base. We're the ambassadors for the entire base. And, this same kind of logic, I agree with what you're saying. You're an ambassador for open carry. When you're out there talking to people about firearms education,
absolutely,
things along
I'm
those
an
lines.
ambassador for gun owners. It's funny you use that term because I'm an instructor also. And I use that term to my students. I say, look, you guys are ambassadors for gun owners. And if you choose to open carry, you're ambassadors for gun owners and open carry people. So absolutely, we're singing the same tune here.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I think that's why the biggest thing for me. I think this is the most critical issue. And actually, before I get to that, I just want to ask you: do you think that this open carry movement? Would you liken it to like a civil rights movement as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, funny you mentioned that. And if I can skip back a second, then we could go. I'm sure if you want to, we can go back to it. But you were talking about long gun carry. I do long gun carry at these university walks, and I do it because it gets us noticed, and there's a greater chance of interaction because, as you said, people don't lots of people don't notice a sidearm, but they'll certainly notice a long arm. And I've taken heat for doing long arm carry at these university walks. But anyway, back to what you were just saying, which was, and I just lost track of what you said.
Open carry being
open carry movement,
like civil rights movement. Yeah.
Funny you mention that because when I open carried here, just after in Ohio, the court decision about open carry or about concealed carry was called Klein versus Lease, and Lease, Leis. Was the sheriff of Hamilton County, the county in which Cincinnati is, and Klein was a private detective, and he may still be alive. There were other plaintiffs in the case, but anyway, shortly after the Supreme Court decision in that case, I decided to open carry, and at that time, and I won't give you my precise age now, but at that time I was, let's say, 40. And I was open carrying on a main street here near where I live called Coleraine Avenue. Mm-hmm. And I was walking down the street open carrying a sidearm only. And evidently the police got called because as I was coming, I don't know whether I was coming back home or I'm not sure which way I was going at that point, but in front of me pulls a police car, pulls into a driveway, cuts in hard in the driveway in front of me, and a female police officer gets out, whips out her gun, points it at me, and says, turn around, put your hands up in the air and turn around. And shortly thereafter followed a Cincinnati police car, and then somewhat later followed a Hamilton County sheriff. And the conversation that ensued, and I'm trying to get back to this point of the civil rights you just talked about, the conversation that ensued, I was lied to. I was treated like I'd never been treated by a police officer. And a light bulb went off. A light bulb went off in my head. It's like, this is how the people could be people of color. It could be people of lower socioeconomic means. It could be people that are neither of those two groups, but just a power, a cop who's on a power trip. Mm-hmm. That light went off in my head, and I was like, this is how it is to live on the other side of the tracks. To have an experience like I'd never had before, and that right there made me recognize that open carry and rights. I mean, not just gun rights. All rights, of course. And not that I hadn't realized that before, but that all of rights, or specifically in this case, firearms rights. It was a civil rights fight. It wasn't about guns. It's about rights. So hopefully that addresses. Yes, I feel very strongly it's about civil rights, and I also feel very strongly that the many ways that rights have been chipped away by various entities. It's like a what do they say? A frog in water. You raise the temperature slowly, and eventually you kill it. And I feel that's what's happened. That's what's happening to our republic.
Absolutely, and I agree. Concerning it being a civil rights movement, I kind of had an opening of my eyes in the same way. I had an unlawful arrest that I'm still in the process of fighting now, and when I was out there, I mean, I was already aware how important open carry was. That was the entire reason I started open carrying in the first place. But to see the police targeting a citizen that's not violating any laws, and it's basically, and I have no problem with police coming up and asking open carriers, hey, what are you doing out here? I don't think the police have a right to make you answer, and they don't have a right to detain you if you haven't committed a crime. They don't have reasonable suspicion, probable cause. If they don't have those things, they can ask all they want, but they can't detain you. And I mean, that's not just me saying that. That's court law. That's the Supreme Court. And in addition to that, that's the United States Constitution protecting your unalienable right. So regarding this whole being a civil rights movement, I love what you're doing. You guys are out there being ambassadors for open carry, and this is why it's so critically important, because when we look back at civil rights movements in the past, for example, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., okay?
Right.
One of the big turning points for the civil rights movement in the 60s was because it actually started, the protests, the walks, all of these things started getting on television, and people would see. They saw what was happening to this persecuted group of people who were asserting their rights and standing up against injustice, and they were getting met by fire hoses, attack dogs, batons to the head, rubber bullets. I mean, these kind of things, they sickened the American public, and that is what caused a lot of people to join their side. Now, regarding open carry, related to that, I'm not saying that it's going to get to that point where we're getting sprayed with fire hoses, but you can't get supporters if you're not in front of people so they can see your plight. You cannot get anyone on your side if no one knows that your side even exists. So it is incredibly important that we keep doing what you and other open carriers are out there doing. So first of all, I just want to say my hat's off to you, man. I hope you keep doing it.
Oh, absolutely. It is, and I'm sure you've had the same experience, the conversations I have had with people, whether at an organized event or just when I've been out open carrying by myself, have been numerous and very, very satisfying. I mean, it is just, it is so satisfying to have the opportunity to talk to someone about a subject that they may not even have thought about talking to someone about, or that they have misgivings about, or that they have misperceptions about guns and gun laws. It is so rewarding, and I think so enlightening for the people that I've had the opportunity to speak with. So
yes, sir. Anyway. No, I completely agree. I feel the same way, and you know what? We got to cut to a commercial break. Would you mind sticking with us, Jeff? I'd like to talk about some of these conversations that you may have had and things along those lines, just so my audience can have an idea as to what actually happens when you're out there open carrying.
Sure.
Okay. We'll be right back after these messages, guys. When we come back, we're going to be talking with Jeff Smith. He's an activist, open carrier, just like myself, and we're going to be talking shop. And also, I just want to talk about the experiences that people have when they're out there open carrying and what happens. So, anyway, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us throughout that break. When we last left, we had open carry activist Jeffrey Smith on the line, and we were talking about gun rights and his take on a lot of different stuff pertaining to open carry, gun rights, things along those lines. So first thing, I just want to start with, hey, Jeff, what are some of those circumstances that you've had where, you've been out talking with somebody and maybe somebody was already, predispositioned to disagree with you on open carry, and you might have changed their minds? What were those some of those arguments maybe that you made, and how did that conversation go?
Well, the changing their mind is hard to say, but there's one. I've had a number of them, not all of which I can remember, but one particular stands out, and this was at the University of Cincinnati walk, where, as I mentioned, not only did people have sidearms, but they also had long arms. And at that walk, I happened to have two sidearms and a long arm. And so anyway, we were rounding the last. We were on the home stretch there to go back to our cars, and the group of people was, I think, about 70 or beyond was the totality of the group. But the group that I was with was probably 20 or 25, and we were walking up Clifton Avenue. We were going north on Clifton Avenue in Cincinnati, and all of a sudden, it's kind of funny. It's kind of like the cop pulling in front of me when I was stopped for the first time in 2004. This car pulls in front of us in a driveway, a black woman driving and a black man sitting in the seat, and she jumps out, and she says, "What the hell is going on?" And we all stopped there. Like I said, there were 20, 25 of us. We all stopped. And I was up near the front, as was a female instructor who I know who's from Columbus. My sister was there, and I forget who else was up front. But anyway, we told her what this was all about. And the next thing she said was, "I'm afraid of guns." Now understand that there were 20 or 25 people standing there, quite well armed. And when she said that, at that time I laughed, and looking back I laugh. I thought, oh my goodness gracious, here's a woman who has pulled her car in, blocked the sidewalk, and the second thing out of her mouth was, "I'm afraid of guns." And we had, my goodness gracious, we were probably there for 20 to 25 minutes talking to her and her boyfriend about what we were doing, about the laws in Ohio, about open carry, about concealed carry, and she went away from that meeting with the calling card of the female instructor that I mentioned, who was from Columbus. I think she was from around Columbus. I don't know if a class ever resulted from that, but that's the most humorous contact that there's ever been with anybody while open carrying, was to have her, as I said, say, I'm afraid of guns, while virtually surrounded by well-armed people.
Yeah, and obviously she could have kept going. But
yeah,
as far as that, I've had several heated debates with people, and I've noticed that for me, my strategy has totally changed, and like you said, it's not necessarily a change; it's an evolution. For me, I look at it as what is effective and what is not, and.
Right.
In terms of yelling at somebody, especially if you get off on a bad foot with somebody, I think that a lot of people will just not listen to your argument, even if you're making excellent points, despite you, because you've stepped on their toes or upset them in some way. So, you basically have to look at what people are concerned about that, like with their issue in particular. So, I've noticed that the best way to go about doing this, for me personally, and maybe I'll find something out later, is to ask questions. I continue to ask questions and ask questions and ask questions until I loop it back around to the point of what I'm making. So, have you had any circumstances like that where you've had somebody that was so against open carry, and then they realized after you were talking with them that, okay, well, maybe it's not so bad, maybe I was wrong?
Well, I wouldn't say that I've had arguments, but I have had, and by the way, the two words I thought of when you were describing your approach, or your evolved approach, was sales and marketing. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's exactly what this is all about, is sales and marketing. I mean, besides exercising your right to openly carry, as an ambassador, you are, if you choose to be, into sales and marketing. So speaking to people, I've not had anybody that I've argued with, I don't think. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'9", and people don't, for whatever reason, they don't tend to take me on physically. But I did have at an event called Riverfest here in Cincinnati, which was where one of the local rock and roll stations, together with another sponsor or other sponsors this big fireworks thing at the end of the summer at Labor Day, and they had posted signage and said that firearms were prohibited. They didn't have the legal right to do so. I organized a group of people. We went down there, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, you traverse part of the riverfront. There's a park there. And I went to sit down. I said, do you mind if I sit here next to these two ladies? And I was wearing two sidearms. And the one looked at me and she says, I don't know whether I should be scared or not. And I sat down, and we must have had a 15 or 20-minute conversation in which they were just, at the end of that conversation, they were not at all concerned. They were enlightened. They had no idea about the legality of it, and I told them I was an instructor, which, seems to put some people at ease, although, there's plenty of people out there who are not instructors. Mm-hmm. But that was probably, like I said, I haven't had arguments with people. It's more discussions, and that is very satisfying to me, is these discussions. Although there was one in Oberlin, Ohio, a very liberal place, that Ohioans for Concealed Carry organized a get-together at the parks there, because they said, they were not going to allow guns in parks. That was against the Ohio preemption statute, which is 9.68. So a number of us went up there, and the people in the parks were just beside themselves that we were standing there with guns. And I talked to a woman that it wouldn't have mattered what I said. She wasn't going to change her mind, but we weren't arguing, we were talking. Mm-hmm. And that just, like I say, that really is satisfying to me to have those conversations.
Absolutely. I've had conversations with people that no matter what, they were dead set in their ways, and you know, I respect people's right to have an opinion different than mine, absolutely. And a lot of times, you know, I'm not always right. You know, I'm wrong. I always say this: I'm wrong 5 times on my way out of the house in the morning. You know, so it's it happens a lot. You know, but on this subject, I feel like you know, I've worked hard to fully understand this, and when I try to talk to somebody, I mean, I'm not even necessarily trying to change your mind if we're having a conversation and you differ with me, at least not in this conversation. What I am trying to do is what we discussed is to be an ambassador, to at least highlight and illustrate the reasons why this is an important cause, and then to make them think. I want them to question their own beliefs based off of the questions I ask them. You know, and that's why I've noticed, and I think you're right as far as it being a sales and marketing kind of aspect. You know, I've got some background in that, so. Regarding that, you know, I think it's an effect. I just look at it as what's effective and what's not. And screaming at people has never been a good way to get them to on your side. You know, you want them to empathize with where you're coming from. And as we were talking about, you know, with the civil rights movement, without that empathy, without people actually caring about your cause, you will lose. You can't gain public support. You can't win hearts and minds, as you like to call it. That's just something you can't do if you're making enemies with people. So.
Absolutely, you
got to make friends and build bridges, but I don't agree with it at the cost of, you know, compromising and sacrificing our liberties. Absolutely not. But you know, there are different ways that we can go about it, and I got a lot of respect for what you're doing. So before I let you go here, I want to talk about this open carry ban overturned article that I have here from the Inquisitor. It actually mentioned you in this, and I want to talk about some of your involvement with this actual. This was Amendment 5 being passed. Was Amendment 5 something that resulted from you guys open carrying, or what happened with this specifically?
No, it's kind of funny because, you know, as I mentioned, I live in. By the way, and let me step back a second. Talking about rights. Rights are a bundle of sticks, and that's, you know, that they. I talk to people about that too, and I presume you do the same. That, you know, this isn't just about gun rights. Rights are a bundle of sticks. They all have an impact on the other. They're all about the individual, not the government. So to answer your question, no, I live in Cincinnati, Ohio, and this walk that is described in that article took place in St. Louis, Missouri, which is about a 5.5-hour drive from here. I have friends and family in Missouri, and so I was keeping an eye, strangely enough, via OCDO, opencarry.org. I was keeping an eye on what was going on in Missouri because I was aware of this SB 656, which was Senate Bill 656, which the legislature ended up overriding the governor's veto of. I was keeping an eye on that, and I had read about Amendment 5, but didn't really know what it was about. And so anyway, I found out that 656 was. The veto was overridden, and I found out that Amendment 5 passed. And then I asked, hey, you know, what is Amendment 5? And they told me, and then I read what it was, and it's just astonishing. And as I mentioned to your listeners, please, especially if you live in Missouri, look up Amendment 5, you know, also they're more properly called, you know, now. Amendment 5 was a modification to Article 1, Section 23 of the Missouri Constitution.
By the way,
look it up.
I'm looking at it right now. I'll go ahead and read it for the benefit of the audience here. Section 23 reads, the right of every citizen to keep and bear arms, ammunition, and accessories typical to the normal function of such arms in defense of his home, person, family, and property, or when lawfully summoned in aid of the civil power, shall not be questioned. That is a really powerful
Keep going.
Oh, yeah, it goes on. The rights guaranteed by this section shall be unalienable. Any restrictions on these rights shall be subject to strict scrutiny, and the state of Missouri shall be obligated to uphold these rights and shall under no circumstance decline to protect against their infringement. Nothing in this section shall be construed to prevent the General Assembly from enacting general laws which limit the rights of convicted violent felons or those duly adjudicated mentally infirm by court or competent jurisdiction.
Yeah, adjudicated, yeah. That is then what happened to the former. That's powerful stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I like that.
what happened is that the part that referred to concealed carry, that the legislature had power over concealed carry, that was removed. So that's, as you see, is not in the new Article 1, Section 23. And a number of things were added, not the least of which was that essentially that the state of Missouri was required to uphold those laws, the strict scrutiny part of it, and that the state was required to, and I can't think of the exact wording, but to uphold those laws. So anyway, back to so I had read, I asked about, on OCDO, I said, what is Amendment 5? And they told me. And then I said, what are you guys going to do with this? I was just floored. I was just like, wow. Hey, it's open season on various laws as far as I was concerned. And I didn't get much of an answer. They were like, well, we have to see what a court decides. And my reaction was, guys, really? Come on. And so I posted, and I will agree, it sounded like I had an enormous head, but I posted it with an attitude on the Missouri forum of OCDO. I posted something that was meant to fire these people up to do something. And of course, like I said, it made me sound like I had the world's largest head. But I posted it out there, and I said, well, I'm going to do a walk in downtown St. Louis, and and basically here are my accomplishments. And there were some guys that came back, and some of which were saying, my, you have a big head, and one of which ended up being Richard Loftus, who basically said, he responded to me. He said, well, sir, and such, and then we communicated via private message. And then we called one another, and we could see that, we could tell from that conversation that we were on the same wavelength. And I told him of the previous walks that I had organized, and at various universities in Ohio, and I don't know if I had done Riverfest at that time or not, but told him about with the power of notice, and how it's to be used in my interaction with the media, et cetera, and basically said, look, if you will tell me the things that I need to know about Missouri and Missouri law, about the various nuances, and if you will essentially vouch for me with the gun people in Missouri, then I will do all of the organizing and the interaction with the press, and the putting authorities on notice, and the interaction with authorities. And so that's how, up until then, to the best of my knowledge, nobody had done anything with Amendment 5. I mean, they were all, at least on OCDO, everybody was waiting for a court case and didn't want to be the first defendant. And my feeling was, look, guys, it says strict scrutiny. It says it says the state shall be, and I forget what the exact words were. Maybe you can find them there. The state is bound to uphold the gun laws. With
any restriction on these rights shall be subject to strict scrutiny, and the state of Missouri shall be obligated to uphold these rights and shall under no circumstance decline to protect these rights against their infringement.
Yeah, as far as I was concerned, that was Captain America's shield right there. Those words. And so I put the event together. I did what I said I would do. Richard did what he said, vouched for me, and told me about, gave me the lay of the land in many, many ways. And the 3 days before the walk, the police chief of St. Louis called me, and I was very irritated because I had given him more than a month's worth of notice. So when he called, I was rather irritated because it was only 3 days before the walk, and he started the conversation with, what can I, I think he said, what can I do for you, which I was appreciative of. And after I unloaded on him for calling me 3 days before the walk, rather than having some lieutenant of his call me, we talked about various things, including parking for people, and then I talked with the people at the National Park Service, who I had talked to the whole time. I thought that was going to be a huge problem to get onto the the Park Service land. They were wonderful to work with. I have the highest of praise for a fellow by the name of Mike Horton, who was the kind of like the assistant to the chief there. And I think the chief's name, I can't think of his first name rather, but his last name is Jackson. But anyway, that is how that came to be. The Amendment 5 thing was something that passed, but I had nothing to do with its passage, but Richard and I had everything to do with its exercise in a big way, putting down a marker and saying, it was my intent, using the experience that I had with putting together these walks, it was my intent to lay down a marker for Missourians and say, look, guys, here it is. Put them on notice. Dare them to challenge you because of the words that you just read, Mac.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think there have been some instances of that, but not as many as I would like to see. But I'm talking from a distance. But this zoo thing is kind of building on that. I have the chief knows who I am now, and not that this walk is about me. It's about the right. Mm-hmm. It's about the zoo is about an arm of government, a political subdivision of government, deceiving people into giving up their rights and privileges. And I was planning to be in Missouri when I am. I've given them the dates of the 13th to the 20th. I was planning to be there anyway. And Sam Payton's notification to me of what had happened and all that, it just all fell together. And so now the same sort of approach that created the walk in October of last year is being used on this the zoo Firearm Rights Challenge event.
Yes, sir. So, in terms of what you're talking about with the power of notice, I'm assuming that you're saying that there is a lot of beneficial aspects of basically notifying the authorities of what you're going to do and laying out the groundwork for what what's going to go on, so it's not a surprise basically to them. Am I correct in what you're saying?
It's twofold. One is that, but the primary reason is that if there is a dispute or an alternative interpretation that the authorities, the police and the prosecutor, because I'm communicating with not only the chief, but I'm communicating with in St. Louis with I think she's called the circuit attorney, which we call in Ohio the prosecutor. Mm-hmm. I'm communicating with the circuit attorney, and I'm communicating with the Attorney General's office, multiple people in the Attorney General's office. So what notice does is say, this is my interpretation of the laws. It is my understanding that this act is legal. If you want to take issue with that, here's your invitation to do so, because it's my intention to do A, B, and C. And then it gives them a chance to come back with, yeah, you're right, hang their heads.
So,
yep, you're right.
Let me ask you, because I can see how that's beneficial, because they either say no and you got them on record for saying that something's illegal that is not, or they say yes, it's legal, and you got them on record saying yes, it's legal. So if there is any legal inquiries behind that, I get that. But let me just ask, I would imagine that you wouldn't need to do that twice then, basically, right?
It depends on the circumstance. For instance, the event on the city streets. Okay, you're not blocking the sidewalks. You're going to follow the pedestrian signs. You're not marching in the street. You're not walking in the street, because this was a walk, not a march. Even though the media loved to call it a march, it was a walk.
Yeah.
And so you put them on notice for that event. It's public streets. It's public sidewalks rather. Mm-hmm. Okay. The notice here in the zoo is a different animal entirely. You're in a confined space. There is, on the sidewalks, there's no question, it's public. And the zoo, well, they may want to play games with whether it's public or private. They may want to play games with, we've got we've got this one building here, and we teach people in that building, so that's a school. You don't have the same sort of environment one place as you do the other. So no, it's not that one notice suffices for everything.
Well, regarding, let's say you're planning a walk twice in the same location, same route, same everything, basically.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get the same benefit. I understand the benefit of it, but the reason why I'm asking and I'm basically inquiring about this is because I've often thought that the entire idea behind open carry is, it's obviously we're not asking permission to do those things. So I don't like that.
And neither is notice.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. I don't feel like I should have to. I mean, I understand the reasons behind the argument of notifying. I get what you're saying.
Right.
And I can see that there are some benefits, and obviously one of those is letting the police know that this is even going to happen, because then they may not show up guns blazing like they sometimes do.
Right, and understand that I draw a distinction between doing this in a group of 70 people and doing it by myself.
Yeah.
If I'm doing it by myself, if I know I'm in a hostile environment where the police or the prosecutor or the politicians, they feel that the appropriate way to respond to somebody open carrying is to have the police throw that person on the ground and do various, use various levels of force against them, then I'm probably going to put them on notice just to make sure that if anything happens, that I can go back and say, hey, you were put on notice, you had your chance, and then you misbehaved. And misbehaved, I'm joking about that term, but you overreacted in an entirely irresponsible and unjustified fashion.
It's basically, what we call in the military CYA. You cover your butt.
Right.
To clean that up, but I mean, right. I get the reasoning behind it. It does make a lot of sense. I definitely like to talk to you more, about these kind of strategies and stuff, because this is stuff that I want to do more of. I want to get more involved, and I want to get in. Organize some walks in my area, in other areas as well. I really respect the fact that you went out of your state to go challenge, or go to basically test a new law. That is amazing. I really like that. That's pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah, there were various people that were like, go back to Ohio. There was one guy with a long-haired, bearded guy at the end of the St. Louis walk. He was saying, Jeffrey Smith, go home.
Well,
in fact, I got his picture. It's just too funny. But yeah, it's my thing is, look, this isn't about me. This is about now. Do I have a certain amount of street cred from doing what I've done? Yes. Do I recognize that? Does it open some doors? Yes, it does, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I don't do this stuff for me. This is the advancement of the recognition of a right. And if because of my experience I can help other people do that, advance the recognition of a right, put the various entities and individuals who would diminish rights in their place, then I'm glad to help. And as I said, I have family and friends in Missouri. That might be different if this was New York State or Texas or something. Mm-hmm. But that's all I'm doing is trying to foster trying to get recognition of rights and trying to foster an environment of activism.
Absolutely. So. No, and I get what you're doing. It is so awesome, first of all, to see somebody that's willing to pick up the mantle of liberty and try to actually, push this forward here. Try to actually get people to understand and talk about these things. But it's even more difficult, I think, to get people to become activists for liberty in areas that basically go across these imaginary borders that we've created for each other. It's easy for us to feel like, all right, gun rights in my state or my city or the gun laws that are affecting me personally are really the only thing that matter, and that's the only thing I got to fight against. But I love when we start connecting the dots between these groups, building up an infrastructure of liberty, and that's I hope to do out here. In Kentucky, I've just recently moved. I hope to connect the dots to all of my gun right activist friends that are in the Pacific Northwest. If we all come together and stop segregating ourselves into these little groups and stop only worrying about the ones the laws that affect us, and we all stand vigilant together, shoulder to shoulder, and say, no, I don't care if you're in New York, I don't care if you're in California, I don't care if you're in Ohio or Texas, I'm not going to stand by and be quiet while Americans have their right to bear arms infringed and restricted. And it's awesome that you're doing this. You're standing up for communities that you don't even live in. I know you're not trying to take any credit or anything, but it's a big deal, and I hope you keep it up, and I hope others pick up where you're leaving off and start pushing forward in St. Louis as well, and other places that you haven't even been in there. I think it's important. But Jeff, I want to give you an opportunity here. I don't know if you're part of any groups or have any, social media or anything that you want to share, but if you do, feel free to share that stuff now.
Okay. Well, you found me on, first let me tell you, Kentucky, and I can tell you off air, or I'll send you an email or whatever, a couple of guys in Kentucky I can hook you up with. One is a guy who, like yourself, just moved from Washington State to Kentucky. He was a big activist in Washington State. I think you want to talk to him. The other is a guy who is with KC3, that's the Kentucky Coalition to Carry Concealed in Kentucky. He would love to have a guy like you on his team. So anyway, I'll hook you up with them off air.
Yes, sir.
But you found me on Facebook. I don't know exactly how. I mean, beneficially, thank goodness. My parents did this, and I thought that everybody else's name was unusual until I got older. But my first name is spelled Jeffry. There's no E at the end. It's not E-R-Y, it's not R-E-Y, it's just R-Y. So Jeffrey Smith. And, you'll find Jeffrey Smith, and it's Cincinnati, Ohio. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how you found me on Facebook.
I'll actually tell you, because I went to this article here on theinquisitor.com, and okay. I copied your name, and then I was looking through my friends, and we're connected by mutual friends that we have, but
okay.
That's how it is in the gun rights community. I know most gun rights activists, it seems like, with at least one or two friends between us here. So, but basically, I just pasted your name and looked for Jeffrey Smith in Ohio. That's why when I messaged you today, I was like, are you the one that was in this article? Because I wasn't sure if you were the one.
Yeah, well, and that's how I would suggest people find me on Facebook. It is, I don't know how many other Jeffrey Smiths are on Facebook spelled the way my first name is spelled. I don't think there's very many of them. I think the link to it's like Jeffrey Smith 35 or something, or it's in the link like that. But if people look, another way to do it is look up St. Louis Zoo, St. St. period, Louis Zoo hyphen firearm. What did I call it? Firearm Education Challenge. Mm-hmm. Is that what I called it? I think.
The St. Louis Open Carry / Firearm Education Walk.
No. That was the one. That was the one in October.
Oh, okay.
This one is called St. Louis Zoo hyphen Firearm Education Challenge. So if they look that up, they'll see I'm the primary host.
Yes, sir.
And they can find me through that. But I would find me there. Go to opencarry.org, the forum there. If people want to talk with other activists or become more of an activist themselves, become more knowledgeable, and that's the place to do it. As you say, there's state borders state borders don't need to be boundaries. I've gone to events in Indianapolis. Obviously, I did this one in St. Louis. I've been to events in Kentucky and in Ohio. I think we've covered the gamut here, and and I'll hook you up with some stuff off there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I certainly appreciate it. And just so you know, I found it. It's the St. Louis Zoo / Firearms Rights Challenge. I'm posting it on my Facebook, and I'm going to blast it out to all my social media. So hopefully you get a little bit more exposure and all that good stuff. I just want to say first, thanks again for joining us. And also, Jeff, would you be interested in joining us again some other day in the future?
Quite possibly so. It's going to probably be after this zoo event, though, because I've got a lot of stuff to nail down, including wrangling with the chief tomorrow or Tuesday. I don't think they're going to go down without a hard fight. So.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we'll keep us apprised on that. Just let us know if you have anything that you need to get out there. Let me know. I'd be happy to talk to you again. And I want to follow up on what you guys are doing with the zoo thing. So feel free to drop us a line and let us know what's going on. Okay.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. You take care.
Will do. Thanks again.
All righty.
Bye now.
All right, guys, so at this point, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about gun rights. We're going to talk, in particular, about some of these featured topics that we had up here. So let's see, the sound and reasonable argument for open carry, why I feel that it is extremely relevant and important that we allow open carry, not just concealed carry. There's nothing wrong with that. But in addition to that, we're also going to talk about the systemic fear mongering that actually takes place from anti-gunners. And I want to talk about some of the things that they say as of why open carry can't happen. Oh, all of this will happen. The sky is falling. Up is down, black is white. All this stuff that they claim will happen from open carry. So we're going to get into that, and then in addition, we're going to go into the practice of dehumanizing political opposition with terms like ammosexual or even sunshine patriot. So anyway, we'll be right back after this break, guys. You don't want to miss this next part. We'll be right back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mac Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. It's great to be here with you on another lovely Sunday broadcasting. First and foremost, I just want to let everybody know who's not familiar with our program. Again, we broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we do so on a few different platforms. First and foremost, we have our main hub, OnTheMoveShow.com. You can go there, check out all of our original content that we have there. Lots of videos from our YouTube channel, youtube.com/OnTheMoveShow. Feel free to subscribe to us on there. Also, we go through simulcasting at the same time as while we're on the air. Simulcast. Isn't technology amazing, first of all? But secondly, we simulcast on haywiregulch.com. Again, that is haywiregulch.com. And then also, you can go to our Spreaker hub there, Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can listen live off of that. You can also download the archive of every episode that we've ever had, and you can download it, you can stream it, whatever you want to do. Feel free to follow us on there. That is Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Anyway, with that said, I want to move on here and get to these conversations regarding open carry here, because I think we had a really good conversation with Jeff. He seems like a really awesome guy, and I'm really happy that I've got in contact with him. I'm trying to get as many different open carriers, as my friends, and just part of the network here. I want to just try to get as many people out there as possible that are like-minded and connect the dots. And I think that the more people that we have together that are standing shoulder to shoulder, the stronger we'll be. I mean, that's without a doubt. The stronger we'll be, we'll have more resources and more minds working on problems. That's better. The two heads are better than one, as they say. Anyway, so let's actually talk about some things here. First and foremost, I want to talk about the whole concept of open carry. Why is open carry important? Why does it matter? Why can't we just be happy with concealing? And my reason behind that is, number one, concealing acts like we're doing something wrong. Okay, when we hide it, it acts as if we are ashamed of what we're doing and that we've done something wrong to begin with. But more importantly, to conceal carry, you also have to get a conceal carry permit. Unless you're in a constitutional carry state like I think Arizona, Wyoming is one. I know that one for sure is one. There are other constitutional carry states, but you get the gist of it. Basically, you're asking for a permission slip to do something that is considered a right, an inherent right, a natural right, a right that was given to you by your creator. So if these are rights that can't be taken away because they were never given to us by our government in the first place, why do we have to ask for permission to assert that right? If concealed carry is the way that they want us, the preferred way to do it, why do we have to ask for permission? You wouldn't ask for permission to conceal your prayers, would you? You wouldn't need a permission slip from the government to go into your house and to pray, or to be in your car and to pray. As long as you're hidden from the public view, you wouldn't need that. That sounds ridiculous to most people, but I mean, this is what we're saying in terms of open carry. This is a right, and freedom of religion, that's a right as well. So you wouldn't need a permit to openly or concealed pray. That just wouldn't happen. So, and if it did, it would be, obviously, many people would have issues with it. So regarding open carry as well, save the whole issue of asking permission from your government to do something that's fundamentally a right and that they didn't give to you. It's innate. It's natural. But look at it like this: if in terms of being an ambassador for open carry, for gun rights in general, what has the government been doing recently? In terms of the mainstream media, they've been demonizing guns, this inanimate object that's no more dangerous than a hunk of metal if not being used. If it's just sitting there, it's not going to jump up and start shooting anybody. It relies on actions of individuals. And if we're talking about the difference between open carry of a handgun and open carry of a pistol, we're basically arguing about looks of something, because you can kill somebody equally as well with an AR-15 or a pistol. I mean, at the kind of urban distances that we're talking about, because this isn't really addressed too much in a rural kind of environment. This is conversations that are had in urban environments. So if we're in a city, it's very likely you're going to be talking about close quarters kind of situations, and a pistol is pretty much equal as far as killing power in terms of that as a rifle. Now, granted, rifles have their differences, but as far as what they are, though, they function the same. They are semi-automatic. We're not talking about open carry of fully automatic weapons, which I think there's no issue with, in my personal opinion. I don't think that you should have be stuck to only carrying semi-automatic. I don't think you should be limited. But in terms of what we're actually talking about, though, we're talking about one semi-automatic rifle and one semi-automatic pistol. That's what it is. Each are semi-automatic. You pull the trigger one time, one bullet goes out. If a bullet hits somebody, it has the potential to kill them. So they're the same. They're equally the same. They function the same way. You pull the trigger, one bullet goes. You pull the trigger again, another bullet goes. You hold that trigger down after you shot, doesn't matter, only one bullet goes. It's semi-automatic. So basically we're arguing about what a weapon looks like now. And that in turn is talking about, basically people being afraid of that weapon, that inanimate object, and being possibly offended by it, or disagreeing with your political views and wanting to silence you by telling you can't do that, or you can't carry that there. So I personally think that individuals who are reckless with their firearms, if they're swinging their barrels all over the place, flagging people's heads with rifles or pistols, if they're doing those kind of things, threatening, brandishing, things along those lines, that is irresponsible. That's, even if you're not intending to be I'm trying to reckless, I guess, but you are. I think if you are accidentally flagging people all over the city with your rifle, I think that's reckless, and I don't think it should be allowed. I that's the only limit, because I look at it as you're putting other people at risk. At that point, you're not just asserting your right to keep and bear arms. You're actually putting other people's lives at risk by flagging their head or their body in some way with a loaded firearm. That's dangerous. Even if it's unloaded, that's still wrong as well, I think. I think it's just immoral to flag somebody with a weapon. That's just my personal opinion. But regardless, in terms of this actual difference between these weapons, there is no difference. A semi-automatic rifle and a semi-automatic pistol can kill you just the same. So as far as I'm concerned, that argument is null and void. You're talking about basically people being offended, and you don't have a right to not be offended. What you do have is a right to move away. If you don't like what I'm doing and you feel uncomfortable around a firearm, which is an inanimate object, and you don't feel uncomfortable because of actions I'm taking, because I'm not pointing the weapon at you, I'm not brandishing, I'm not threatening you, I'm not joking or gesturing or being reckless with the firearm. If it's just slung or holstered, then you're not talking about actions that I'm doing. You're talking about the object itself, and you're offended by an object. And that to me sounds like a personal problem. If you're offended by an object, that's your decision to be offended by that object that is not being... there are no mannerisms or actions being taken with this other than it's just there, the mere presence of this object. But you're offended by it. You have the right to leave. Feel free to leave. No one's stopping you, certainly not me. But you don't have a right to tell somebody that they can't carry this object that they're legally and constitutionally allowed to carry. They have a right to carry, not even just allowed. No one can stop them from carrying it. They have a right to do this. So you have a right. You have a freedom of travel. Feel free to assert that right at any moment. In regards to a lot of other conversations about this, people talk about, we were talking earlier about being ambassadors for open carry. The important part is to get it normalized, because the mainstream media, they demonize these guns. More and more people don't see it because people are more and more concealed carrying nowadays. People, and I have no problem with concealed carry, but if you are concealed carrying, what you're doing is you're not participating in these conversations that Jeff and I were talking about, where you can educate the public out there to talk about it, because many people haven't seen any civilians carrying firearms. And why is that? Because we're all concealed carrying now. It's suddenly become the thing to do, to conceal carry. It's like we're hiding these. We're embarrassed of concealed carry, of actually open carrying our weapons. These weapons are not anything to be ashamed of. We don't have to hide this. And I understand the tactical advantage that comes along with your opponent or enemy or something not knowing that you have a firearm. Okay? If you're being threatened or something along those lines and they don't know you have a firearm, you have a strategic advantage. I get it. However, you don't have the deterrent effect of somebody with a gun on their hip or a gun slung over their shoulder that would even prevent that possible threat from even happening to begin with. So, granted, it's give and take. Each one has its benefits. However, I support both. I think that there's nothing wrong with concealed carrying. However, if you only support concealed carry, you're not participating in these conversations, this education of the community, but the conversation's still being had. The government's still having it. The mainstream media is still having it. People are still consuming the propaganda related to guns and the fear behind it, but all they're doing is they're just not hearing your side. They're not hearing what law-abiding citizens say concerning gun rights. The only side that they're hearing is the bad side, and that's why it's demonized. So again, as an ambassador for gun rights, going out and talking to people with an open carry firearm, speaking to them about what you're doing out there, what the gun laws are, what their rights are, things along those lines, those are important. But what I also think is extremely important is to normalize people to seeing the guns. And I had a conversation today, and the person I spoke with, he'll remain nameless, but I just want to illustrate how this works. Okay, one of the concerns he had was that open carriers. He felt like open carriers were trying to start conflicts with the police because we go out there with video cameras, and he thought that we were looking for a conflict with the police. And for me, first of all, I disagree with that. I don't think that just because you go out with a video camera and a rifle, you're trying to start trouble. I disagree with that. But in terms of what it does, He mentioned the video camera as a problem, and I just want to say I truly believe that my video camera saved my life. I think if it were not for my video camera, I would have probably gotten shot. That's my personal opinion. And also, my video camera, if you guys want, feel free to go ahead and look through the video of me getting unlawfully arrested for open carry. The uncut version, if you see, I was in a Burgerville, and the cashier at Burgerville said that she asked me to leave. That never happened, and it was on film. She said that on stand. She perjured herself, essentially, but nothing happened to her, apparently. But she was caught from the video lying about something that she did not tell me to do. So, anyway, the video camera is essential, in my opinion, when you're talking about open carry, because it protects you. It protects you. So, secondly, in terms of talking with the police, the issue of being an ambassador is not just with the citizenry, it's also with the police. Because, I mean, the ideal situation is you go out and you don't see a single police officer, and that's all great. You don't have to worry about it. And even in my video, I was discussing, wow, good on the police department. You know, I was out there walking around for 30 minutes before I saw one single police officer. And I thought, wow, congratulations to this city of Vancouver, because either one, their citizens know that open carry is not illegal and they didn't call the police on me unwarranted. So good on them for that. Or if they did, the police knew that it wasn't illegal and they were just like, oh, well, you know, it's just some guy asserting his rights, no big deal. So that's what I thought. And that's the ideal circumstance. But when the police show up, it's important that we have conversations with them. We let them know that we're not going to just roll over and give up our rights. You know, there's no issue with talking with police, but there is a major issue in sacrificing your other liberties by force by the police. All right, for them intimidating you, trying to basically say that you're being detained when you haven't committed a crime. They have no reasonable suspicion or probable cause to detain you. That's a requirement to detain you. And it's certainly a requirement to seize your firearm. They can't just seize things and search things from people who aren't breaking the law. And the police need to know that we're not going to tolerate that. And they also need to know what they are not allowed to do, what the laws are themselves. So let me explain to you what I call a trifecta here of what we need to accomplish. If we change one of the hearts and minds out of this trifecta of individual groups, then we will affect some pretty solid change. Okay, so in terms, if we change the citizenry's mind about open carry, we normalize it where we're out there all the time open carrying. They see members of the community out there smiling, well dressed, just members of their community. Could be their neighbor, could be their pastor, could be anybody else in the community. It doesn't matter. The point is that you're just a normal looking person out there, asserting your rights, and you're smiling and you're friendly. Maybe the first few times they see you, they may be afraid. Maybe the next few times after that, they'll just kind of look at you funny. Eventually, they're going to just stop giving a crap about you being there. It doesn't matter if they call the police or not at first. Eventually, you're just going to be, oh, there's that crazy guy with the gun again, whatever, no big deal, and it's normalized to them. In addition to that, all right, if the police respond enough to open carriers, they're going to start approaching open carriers differently. If the police, honestly, that's the enforcement arm. This is the biggest deal, I think, in my personal opinion, is how police react to open carriers. So the only way to get them used to doing that is to open carry. They have to see that as something normal and not a threat to the community. And lastly, the last group is the police dispatchers. Because if the police dispatchers are asking the right questions, well, are they threatening anyone? Are they pointing their gun at anyone? Then the police themselves won't even arrive, because they realize it's not an emergency situation that does not warrant a police response, or at least not one where they're responding with weapons drawn as a security situation. Maybe it's a general inquiry as to, hey, what are you doing out here? Is there something that I can do for you? Would you mind telling me where you're going to go? That way, if I get calls, I know that's you. I understand the reason behind that. However, personally, I don't feel like sharing that kind of information with the police officer. If you chose to, that's your decision, but you have a right not to, and you have no duty or obligation to provide that information. So, these three, I think, are the citizens, the police, and the dispatchers are the three that we all need to work on, because if it's normalized with just one of these groups, it won't matter what the other two do. if the citizens aren't normalized, let's say, for example, if the police are normalized, and a citizen calls the dispatchers, and the dispatchers, start sending people out, and the police know how to deal with it properly, it won't be an issue. If the dispatchers are asking the right questions, it'll never arrive to the police. And the first chain of events here is the citizens. If the citizens stop calling 911, we'll be less likely to see police showing up and their dispatchers sending them out. So those three are extremely important, and that's why I think open carry could be normalized. It just will take more people to do it. Now, I want to talk about this, the other real issues of open carry, and this is partly with the fear mongering that's involved. In terms, I've heard this. I just heard this today, and I was talking to somebody, and they said, well, okay, what if it was normalized in the community and people were completely used to seeing firearms everywhere, basically, and so much so that when a mass shooter walked into a mall or something like that, nobody blinked an eye and they didn't even feel threatened at all. Well, I asked the guy earlier, I was like, do you think that people can identify the difference between an aggressor and a non-aggressor with a gun, i.e. somebody who's pointing a gun at somebody, moving tactically, shouting at them, things along those lines, that's an aggressor. And somebody who's just smiling, peacefully walking, gun slung, not touching it, things along those lines, that's a non-aggressor. That's somebody who's not being aggressive. And he, after a few questions, he said, yeah, I think people can tell the difference. So with that, his admission that people can tell the difference between a bad guy with a gun and a good guy with a gun, the entire situation in a mall, if somebody walked in with a firearm and they were trying to use this as a way of getting close into the people, it very well could happen. It could happen. But let's point out the fact that it's never happened before. Never. In the history of our country, it's never happened before. And it doesn't really matter because the laws regarding open carry, if it's not legal, it's not going to stop that kind of thing from happening. It's not going to stop mass shootings. Mass shooters have still shot, and it doesn't matter because murder is already illegal. So it doesn't matter what laws you put on the books. It doesn't matter what you make illegal. Criminals, by the mere definition of being criminals, violate the law. So it's not going to matter how many open carry laws you have, how many gun restrictions you have. If somebody wants to do harm to others, they'll find a way, whether or not it's with a gun, whether or not they open carry it into a place. But you're going to quickly be able to determine friend from foe in a mass shooting situation. And the answer for me personally is to totally shatter this lie that is being perpetuated by our government and anti-gunner fearmongers that say that the government can protect you from everything. It's the government's job to protect you from everything. It is the biggest lie that's being perpetuated on the American people right now. You are responsible for your own safety. You have an inherent right of self-defense. So the answer is not to say, well, let's restrict the right of the citizens and empower the government to save you. The answer is, let's empower the citizens to open carry and not rely on the government to save us. Let's hope that if that mass shooter goes into a mall, let's hope that other citizens have firearms and they can defend themselves. We'd be more likely to see a mass shooting being stopped in its tracks, like, for example, what happened in the Clackamas mall shooting. I don't know if you're all familiar about this, but we've talked about it in the past. In Clackamas Town Center, there was a shooting in the mall. A concealed carry card holder, a guy who had a concealed carry permit, he was there in the mall, he had his firearm, and he pointed a gun at the shooter, didn't shoot at him, but that pointing the gun made the shooter run away, and I believe he eventually killed himself, if I'm not mistaken. Not the concealed carry permit holder, but the shooter. So he stopped a shooting. Police hadn't stopped it. He stopped it. Who knows how many lives that he saved? In my opinion, everybody should be armed, especially everybody who wants to be armed. And if it was normalized, if there wasn't so much, if it wasn't stigmatized it's a crazy guy with a gun, whatever, like if it wasn't a big deal for everyone to have firearms, like it was, at the founding of this country, if you could walk around with a firearm, nobody would think twice. Nobody would even care. That's the way I think it should be again. And I understand judgments. There's nothing wrong with judging people as threats or not threats. Obviously, if I look at you and I don't know you and I see you with a gun, I'm going to file that away in my mental Rolodex that you have a capability of shooting me, and I may watch you, but, that doesn't mean that I don't think that you should carry. I may pay a little bit more attention to your behavior and see if you are a threat indeed, and if you're not, oh, okay, it's probably okay, no big deal. But there's no issue with people making those kind of judgment calls. That's a survival instinct, really. But the issue is to make it so that you are so judgmental about this person carrying a firearm to defend themselves, and possibly you, by the way, that you want to restrict their rights because you were offended. I have a fundamental issue with that, and I think that argument is based on fear. And I want to actually talk about one of these articles here I found regarding this fear. I think it is astounding, and it's almost hilarious. They're talking about this is FoxNews.com. This is an article written by I don't know. I have no idea who the author of this article is. I don't know. Anyway, it's FoxNews.com. The article is titled "Gunpoint Average: Texas Professor Claims Campus Carry Law Will Improve Grades." And it's kind of a funny correlation that they make. So basically, this professor is afraid that in making open carry legal on campuses, that teachers will be afraid to give students bad grades because they may get shot. That's the issue. And the teacher says, will we soon see a new sort of grade inflation with students earning a 4.0 GPA with their firepower rather than their brain power? This is astounding to me. All right, first of all, it's based on fear. I have no idea if this has ever happened before, but I can't believe that it has. Very often, at least, anyway, where somebody threatens a professor with a gun to get their grades higher. Now, let me also point out the fact that that's illegal. Okay, it's illegal to threaten somebody with a gun. That's already illegal. So the fact that somebody's planning on threatening their professor with a gun, which is an illegal act, by the way, on a campus, do you really think that they're going to care that it's illegal to have the gun there in the first place? No. Why? Because they're criminals. And by definition, criminals don't follow the law. So this will not have an effect on your grades, people. It won't. I mean, it's just not going to have an effect. And she's afraid that the teachers will just automatically start giving higher grades, because they're afraid that, oh, that guy open carries, so I better give him a 4.0 GPA average. I have to, because he may threaten me. Well, that's an unreasonable fear, and I don't think that we should be fear-mongering. I don't think that we should live in fear, and I don't think that we should base our laws on fear of individuals asserting their rights. That's not what this country was founded on. I think it's pretty despicable to do that. Anyway, the last conversation I want to have is in regards to the demonizing of our political opponents by using terms like ammosexual and sunshine patriot. So in terms of this conversation, I've been guilty of this, but let's first start out with this term ammosexual. All right, ammosexual is used to describe gun rights supporters, gun rights activists from the left-leaning anti-gun extremist activists, what I like to call them. I think that's a long name, but I think it accurately depicts them. So when we're talking about these people, it's kind of an odd dynamic that they have, because they call us ammosexual as if it's like a derogatory term, leading to the fact that we may be homosexual or something along those lines, as if that's a derogatory term. But it's interesting that this comes from the left. The people that are supposed to be championing gay rights, as these are the people for the gay rights, which first of all, I disagree. I think that they aren't the people for the gay rights. I think if anybody is, it's the Libertarian Party, because they're for everybody's rights all the time, no exception, no compromise. It's a party for all of your liberties all the time. It makes sense. But this term, I think it really is being used from people who, number one, don't understand an argument, or they've run out of road. They've run out of our road in the argument or the debate. They've lost the debate. If you have to turn towards name calling, you're not winning that argument, or at least not affecting the change that you might hope. I would hope that if you guys are having arguments with people about political issues, you're hoping to persuade, right? Because otherwise, what's the point of having the argument? You might as well be talking to a wall. If I'm going to talk to you and you're not going to, try to learn anything from what I'm talking, and vice versa, if you're going to talk to me and I'm not going to try to even listen to you and see if your reasoning is sound, if I'm not going to do that, then there's no point in us even talking. I might as well be talking to a brick wall or just not talk and save my energy. So, there's no point in those conversations unless the only one that has a point for that. And this is what I do all the time. Even if I know that your heart's set on your issue, I want to hear your side of it because maybe I'm wrong. But I am listening to you. So that's the point. I'm willing to hear you out, and then I listen to your argument, and okay, well, no, I'm right, or no, okay, maybe I'm wrong this time. So I'll listen to you. So that's the point of these kind of debates is to learn what the other side's saying, see if they're right, those kind of things. So. I think when you start labeling somebody as an ammosexual or sunshine patriot right off the bat, you have to be very careful because you may have just closed the door to somebody who could have potentially become an ally. And I think this is really important to note. There are so many differences of opinion within the gun community. Just look at the NRA, look at the Gun Owners of America. They both stand for different things. OpenCarry.org even differs with me. I'm an open carrier, they're open carriers, but they more support the right to open carry pistols, and I support all of it. So. There's even differences of opinion in that. But to call somebody sunshine patriot, okay, and this is something that I've done. I've done before, and I feel like I've been reasonable about it. I look at it as more of a label, so I understand where you're coming from, and I can figure out what you classify in. And I'm not quick to throw somebody in a sunshine patriot category. But I will say what a sunshine patriot is somebody who says they support the uninfringed right to keep and bear arms, but they have infringements that they would like to put on it. So that is a sunshine patriot. And basically, just so you know, the story behind a sunshine patriot is, Thomas Paine is talking about the sunshine patriot and the winter soldier. You want to be the winter soldier. It doesn't matter, how difficult the fight is. It doesn't matter, if it even seems unwinnable. If it's worth fighting, then you have to be a winter soldier. You can't be a sunshine patriot and just fight when the weather's nice. You have to be able to dig your heels in and fight even if you're not even sure if you can win. And that's why this episode today is titled Open Carry, a Fight Worth Having. I firmly believe that every hill is not worth dying on. Absolutely. There's some issues that I personally don't really care about, And there's other issues that they may be important, but they're not worth dying for. Open carry to me is worth dying for. This is a fight worth having. This is the next civil rights movement. This, in my opinion, is no less important than the civil rights movement of the 1960s led by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I think that the right to keep and bear arms is inherent. It's self-evident, and we shouldn't have to ask for permission. And we should be okay with fighting for this right to be uninfringed as it was intended. We can't allow ourselves to be divided on these issues. We can't allow ourselves to basically cut out allies. And we have to work together. We have to find a way to come together. Even the sunshine patriots out there, they would be okay with open carry if they didn't think it was so divisive. So we just have to make them understand why it's important. And it's not the fact that we can force them into our beliefs, but if we work at it and at least stay civil and try to convince them of our argument, of the merits of our argument, hear their concerns, and give them rebuttals for it. If we actually engage in dialogue without name calling, I think maybe we have a chance. And let's try to hesitate before we label somebody as a sunshine patriot. I know it's easy to do, but it's also not beneficial to the conversation. And it's something I'm guilty of as well. So anyway, with that said, I really do appreciate you guys tuning in today. And just so you know, you can do that every week. We broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to check us out at our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. Follow us at Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.